there everyone, Violeta here with the next installment of Vi's Bookshelf. Today I'm going to talk about the book Black Blade Blues by J.A. Pitts. Now this book is an urban fantasy set in modern times with a paranormal slant to it. The main character is a blacksmith and also a set costumer for a small movie studio. Now, going into it, I didn't really know what to expect. I knew there was something about dragons, something about magical blades, something about this awesome, badass female hero. That's about all I knew. But I thought, the title was interesting, the cover caught my attention, so I figured, you know what, why not? We'll give it a shot. And I did. Now, like I said, I didn't know what to expect. It turns out that there is, in fact, some romance in the story, though it is a lesbian romance. If you're not into that, then I would just go ahead and not deal with this particular book, because it does play a fairly large role in events and in what happens. Now, the major issue I have with this story is not, the fact that it's girl on girl. It's not that, it's not anything like that. My major issue is that we don't really see much of the good of the romantic relationship, so much as we see the issues that the characters go through. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. We do have some flashbacks to, the good times, as it were. But overall, I felt that, it didn't really... I don't think we saw enough. It's kind of that show, don't tell sort of situation. And the reason I'm harping on this so strongly is that the struggle that the main character, who is somewhat still in the closet, goes through with when it comes to this particular relationship drives a lot of the action, insofar as the decisions and some of the situations the main character is in are directly related to the issues with this relationship. The main character, she's a badass. She's strong, physically fit, being a honest to goodness blacksmith, which honestly is freaking awesome. I think that's great. I like the idea of a modern day blacksmith who that's what they would rather be doing, but being the modern age, there's not as much call for that. But I thought that she was really cool. I liked her. I liked the work she does, and I honestly felt that the world building was decent. Clearly it's set in modern times. It's just modern times that also happens to have some supernatural stuff in it that not very many people know about. The myths are that, we have myths apparently for a reason, and not just because humans tend to make awesome stories. No, they're there because they're real. And the title, Black Blade Blues, has to do with a sword that came into the main character's possession and turns out to be this epic, historic relic that is, once awoken, extraordinarily powerful. Powerful enough to kill, essentially, the myth of myths, a dragon. And in this particular universe, dragons are intelligent, they're strong, they're powerful, and they control a lot of the world, even though us lowly humans don't know anything about it. Needless to say, Blade gets awoken, Blacksmith is now suddenly, guess what? You are now chosen to be the wielder, have fun. Yes, all these myth things are real. No, we're not going to really tell you what to do with it, except for the fact that, guess what? We want you to kill a dragon. Woo! Yeah, that doesn't go over so well, unsurprisingly. That's the basic premise of it. But really, some of what drives what happens, as I said before, is the romantic relationship. And I wish we saw more of the relationship, like that we had more scenes in the book about it. And I would have said this about any sort of relationship that drives the action as strongly as this one does seem to, because what we really see is just a handful of glimpses of what it might be like when they're happy. And mostly we have, fights. And honestly, the fights are mainly about the fact that one partner is totally and completely fine with being, known as being gay. The other is still somewhat in the closet due to her own history and how uncomfortable she is with being judged. And it's not necessarily that she doesn't want to come out of the closet. It's more the fear and just, at this point, a sort of instinctive reaction to the idea of it. And that's where part of my problems with that relationship comes. Main character has some trauma to do with this in her background. She's been clear about this to her partner. Partner knows. Partner 100% knows. And yet pushes her anyway. Tries to do things that make the main character uncomfortable. Like public displays of affection that she should know are going too far. And those things and the subsequent freak out about those things are where the major fights come from. And honestly, I know we're supposed to, given the way the book is written, see both sides of it, and I can. I can see the frustration of, I love this person, I want to be with this person, I want people to know that I'm with this person because, you know what, they're awesome, and I want people to know how awesome they are and how much I love them. I get that. That makes sense to me. But at the same time, it also makes sense, for somebody who isn't ready for that, who has, emotional trauma associated with that. You can't just shove them into it and expect it to be okay. You can't do that to somebody that you supposedly love and expect them to react well. And that was the big thing for me, is that there was, even when they reconciled, there was never really any, you know what, I'm sorry for pushing you into this. I know you're not comfortable with it. I should have known better. It all just sort of gets glossed over because, oh my God, we could have all died. So we're not even going to worry about, the trivial stuff, which, I get. It is fairly trivial compared to life and death when their friends actually do die. There is death in this book. It's not super graphic. I mean, it kind of is. Big showdown, death, fair amount of death, actually, but it's not super graphic. So that should hopefully not be too much for anybody. But I get that, life and death, kind of a bigger deal than whether or not our friends know we're gay is. I get that. And at the end of it, the main character is more comfortable having people know about it because they, friends are actually being legit friends and not being judgy or asshole-ish about it. I think I still pronounced that wrong. Whatever. But to me, now this might just be my own issues and hang-ups, I'm not sure, but to me the biggest thing that a good relationship is based on is trust. And we're told that this relationship is based on trust, that it's a good one, that it's a healthy one for the most part. But I don't feel that way when reading about it. I feel kind of like one side abuses the trust of the other, and yet it's never really gone into, it's never reconciled, and it really does rub me the wrong way. I wish that we'd seen a little bit more of the equality in the relationship, maybe a little bit more about, how it was when it was working well. Because as it is, I don't really feel like they should even be together at the end of it. Other than the whole, yay, we rescued, significant other from the dragon, which, fairy tale and all that sort of thing. But I felt like that shouldn't have been it. That the relationship really should have evolved a little bit more, and not just on the whole I guess I'm okay with being openly gay side, and more on the whole, you need to learn to respect the boundaries that I have with the knowledge that you do have, because I have told you my deepest, darkest secrets already. Like, I feel like there isn't enough give and take. It didn't necessarily feel super healthy to me. And that is a pretty big red flag when it comes to reading things. And I'll be honest, I read a lot of romance. I mean, I do read a lot of romance. I read a lot of paranormal romance. I read a lot of urban paranormal romance. And it's usually my bread and butter. I enjoy reading them. Even when they're essentially cardboard cutouts, which I enjoy a little bit less, but when I'm in the mood for it, I'll read that anyway and still enjoy it. But for me, especially when a book is trying to be more than just, here's some cardboard cutouts of basic character archetypes, here's a situation, let's go have love and fun times and all that. Like, when a book is trying to be more than that, I tend to hold it to a higher standard, simply because it's trying to be held to a higher standard. It's not trying to be just another romance. And that's what this book is. This book is, yes, it's about the relationship, but it's also about the world, about these new abilities and strengths of the main character, finding out about this other side to the world that nobody really, like, the main character had no idea. It's exploration of, all these myths, these things that were supposedly not real, actually being real, dealing with them, trying to come up with ways to combat them. It's actually, I think, a very interesting book, and I do like the world building in it. And I would have liked it even more, I think, if the relationship felt a little more healthy. And maybe it was meant to not feel healthy. Maybe it wasn't supposed to be a healthy, good relationship. I don't know. The way it came across was that it was supposed to be at the end. By the end, they've worked past their issues, whatnot. They're happy together. They love each other, and all that goodness. But at the same time, it didn't feel like it to me. And like I said, could be my own hang-ups. It could be my own personal opinion on what makes a good, solid, healthy relationship. But I did feel like, because this book focused and was driven just as much by the romance as by the, supernatural adventure parts of it, that a little more care could have been taken in showing us this romance and the good sides, and showing us, that it isn't all just one person's fault. Any argument has two people. It takes two people to argue, which means two different people have made two different mistakes, whether or not that mistake is as simple as engaging in an argument. It could be. But the truth is, you have two people to argue. And this book to me felt like only one person ever acknowledged that they were wrong. And it wasn't necessarily the person that I thought should have. I mean, yes, they were doing a disservice to their friends, essentially feeling like their friends would turn on them, you know, if they knew that they were gay. Now, a good friend I don't think would. Most likely. And, you know, and it turns out in this book that their good friends really don't care. You know, you're still you, we still care about you, you're still our friend, so you know what? We don't care. You're you, that's good enough for us. But, so while it's true that you didn't necessarily, like, hiding it wasn't really necessarily healthy, it also didn't feel right to force it. And yet, there was never any inclination that the party who was trying to force it felt bad about that, that they ever felt that they were wrong to do that, which I felt that they were. That could just be me, however. Overall, I thought the book was very interesting. I am a little bit sad because some of the supernatural elements were not, they weren't entirely explained. Now, that's because this is clearly the start of a series. I don't know if there are more books in this series. There might be. Haven't looked that up yet. But it is the beginning of a series. And I'm not entirely sure where it's going to go. I'm not sure exactly what's going on at the very end. There are some things that I honestly don't know what to think of it. I wish we'd gotten a little more, some more answers to some things, so it didn't feel quite so abrupt at the end. That, you know, we had a little bit more to go on what's actually going on, what, you know, where the series might actually be going. Something more, I think, more concrete to hook us with. That's really my biggest complaints with it, is that I wish there had been more about the relationship so we could understand it a bit better, and that there was more of a solid hook at the end. Since it is, while it is a sort of contained story arc, it's clearly not the end of the story. I just wish we had a little bit more to go on. The writing was good. I did enjoy it. I just think that those two things could have been better. The book did make me realize that, in general, I do have a preference that I didn't know about, and that preference is to see all the stages of the relationship, or of a major relationship, from the beginning to the end. Apparently, I do have a preference for seeing a relationship build from the start. Now, I think that really does just go back to the whole show don't tell thing. I clearly prefer seeing the strengths of a relationship, seeing the way the partners get along, you know, how, you know, the pieces of their lives fit together. I like seeing it happen as it happens. I prefer that to just being told that they have this great relationship. And looking back on the way I feel about certain other books, I think that it's fairly clear to me now that I do in fact have that. So some of my discontent with this book could be put at the feet of that particular preference of mine, which I was not aware of until after reading and thinking about this book. Overall, if you're okay with you know, a lesbian romance, if you like urban mythological mixing, I think that this book is actually very interesting. I think it has a lot of good things going for it. I think the idea of a modern day blacksmith who, while they primarily they have to get money from a bunch of different jobs because, you know, blacksmithing isn't quite as big a thing nowadays as, it might have been a couple centuries ago. I thought it was still a very interesting take on, the fantasy hero set in modern times. It was interesting. I did like the characters, though I have to admit, we made it all the way through the entire book, and I'm still not sure what the main character looks like. I know what her build is, but I don't really know anything else. Now, this might have been an attempt, at kind of letting the reader fill in the blanks as they see fit. But really, I think it was probably a little bit of an oversight, because the book primarily follows one person's point of view at a time. And most people don't go around thinking about, my brown hair, my brown eyes, my whatever. Most of the time you don't really get those specific thoughts, because it's just my hair, my eyes. But I do wish that we'd been given a little bit more detail about what the main character looks like. It doesn't really detract over much from the story. It was just something I did notice, and I wished I had a little bit more to go on as to what they look like. Because the cover was part of what attracted me to the book, I essentially decided to just envision the cover version of the main character as, okay, that's just what she's going to look like. That's just what it is. And since there wasn't anything directly contradicting it in the book itself, I think you're safe enough doing that. In general, the world building was interesting. It was a bit of a different take on the mythology is real, because it focused more on Norse mythology than necessarily did on like Greek or Roman, or even just, general stuff, which I found very interesting. And I thought that it was an interesting first book in a series. So if you guys are okay with the relationship and you're interested in this sort of world building, this sort of book in general, I would recommend reading it. If I find the second book, I will probably pick it up. Though I will admit to not necessarily going out specifically to look for it. If I do come across it, I'll probably get it and I'll probably read it, but it's not one necessarily that I'm going to purposefully search for. And really that has everything to do with the fact that I don't feel it had a solid hook at the end to make me want to pick up the next book in the series. Mainly, I was just confused about some of the overarching plot lines, because you're just not given very solid answers on any of it. Part of that is because the main character themselves, they don't know. She doesn't know. She's new to this. She barely survived. Right now, they're just all, like, most of the characters, they're just picking up the pieces. But I did feel that as an audience, it would have done better to give us a little bit more to make us want to know what's really going on here. Overall, it was a good book. It was a solid read. And I recommend it for people who would like lesbian romances, or who don't mind lesbian romances. Assuming some of the things that I did have complaints aren't, just big no's for you. As long as, you're okay with some of those points, then I would say go ahead, read it, enjoy it, find out if it's for you, because, I actually did enjoy reading it. It was a good read. It didn't actually take me that long to finish, because I did want to know what happened throughout, so I just kept reading it. There was never really any points where I was just like, eh, I guess I don't need to finish it. There was never anything like that. So I do recommend picking it up if it sounds like something that you might like or that you might be interested in. The world building was very interesting. I was very excited to see some of the mythological creatures and characters show up in it. There was one particular one that I'm not going to spoil who it is for you, but when the character was first introduced, I thought something was off, and then the next time we saw him, I suspected who it might be. And I said out loud later on at the reveal, I knew it! I was pretty proud of myself for catching that without, being explicitly told. I was very happy about that. That was a nice addition and surprise, and it does go into a bit of a different feel than a lot of the paranormal urban stories that I usually read do, which I did appreciate. It's always nice to see a slightly different take on the modern day but with myth ideas. I do recommend it for those of you who like that sort of thing. I enjoyed it, and that's really all I have to say about it. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please consider subscribing or donating via our Patreon, because every little bit helps. I'm Violeta here at Last Level Press, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!